In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the most powerful computer in the universe is asked a question. And the question is to define the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. And it's thought to be the ultimate question. After thousands and thousands of years, the answer that the computer, called deep thought, comes to is 42. Hold that thought. We're going to come back to it. Today, we're looking at an interesting nugget in Matthew's Gospel right at the beginning in chapter 1. This is Matthew chapter 1, verse 17 from the ESV. So all the generations from Abraham to David were 14 generations, and from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation to Babylon to the Christ, 14 generations. So let's break this into three parts, and we'll take a look at one at a time. Pasai un hai genei apo Abraham heos David genei deca pardon me. So pasai, all, we're going to skip over un for a second, hai genei, the generations, all the generations, then we get our un, then, or therefore, apo Abraham, from Abraham, heos, until David, genei, generations, deca 14. So deca 10, tessera 4, deca is 14. So from the beginning of Judaism, from the calling of the prototypical Jew, Abram, who becomes Abraham, until the firm establishment of the kingdom of Israel under its sort of peak monarch, David, is, we're told, is 14 generations. So all the generations from Abraham until David are 14 generations. So you can see that as sort of from the beginning of God's peculiar people, his chosen people, to a place where they're established as a nation and have their sort of most famous, most important king who plays a role in the lineage of the Messiah, we're told, is 14 generations. Let's go to the second part. Kai apo David heos tes metoikesias Babylonos genei deca. So kai apo David, and from David, heos, until, this is a great term, tes metoikesias Babylonos. So tes metoikesias is the after housing. So the ESV translates it the deportation. Other versions translate it the exile or the captivity. It's literally the after housing, right? So you were housed where? Well, prior to the exile, they were housed in Israel. But then the Babylonians swept them up and took them back to Babylon. For reference, read the major prophets leading up to the exile. Read Daniel as an important part of being in the exile, Nehemiah at the end of the exile, etc., etc., etc. But the exile here is described as being after-homed or after-housed. You were living in Israel, but then you were relocated and are now living in Babylon. And we're told that genei deca, that also took 14 generations to go from David to the exile. And finally, last part, kai apotes metoikesias Babylonos heos to Christu genei deca. So kai apo, and from tes metoikesias Babylonos, the captivity or the after housing of Babylon, heos to Christu, until the Christ. Note that it has the article in front of it, the specific coming of the Christ, which is what Matthew is writing about in his gospel. We're then told one more time, genei deca, generations 14. 14 generations. So the history of God's people from Abram, who becomes Abraham, unto the coming of the Christ, unto the arrival of the Messiah, is 3 sets of 14 generations, 3 epochs of 14 generations. So we go first from the first Jew, the first patriarch, to the establishment of the nation under its greatest king, unto the exile, unto the arrival of the Christ, broken into 3 epochs. So 3 epochs times 14 generations gives us 14 total generations from Abe to Christ. Now I'm going to throw a nugget in here, probably more of a tangent than a nugget. Most genealogies are not exhaustive, but are representative. Okay, so we're hitting important figures, important names who made a significant contribution and who are important to the legacy of the ultimate person we're talking about, either at the beginning of the genealogy or the end, or because of their recognizable contribution. So I'm not saying, for anyone who's going to get up in arms, I'm not saying that it's not a literal 14. What I'm saying is that in general, genealogies are not exhaustive and list every single person who was involved, because there could be some guy named Shlomo in the genealogy who wasn't important in any respect and whose name you wouldn't recognize, and therefore serves no instructional purpose in the genealogy. That being said, let's get back to our number. So 3 times 14, 14 is double the perfect number, the godly number 7. 3 sets of 14 gives us 42 generations from Abram to Christ. And my question to you is, do you think Douglas Adams, when he wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when he came up with the answer, what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, and he chose the answer to be 42, do you think he was influenced by this? I don't know. I'd love to have had the chance to ask him. But here's what we do know. In Matthew's genealogy, he makes sure that he tells us that it's 42 generations from the calling of Abram to the arrival of the Christ. And it's a significant number in apocalyptic literature. In the book of Daniel, we get some important 42s. In the book of Revelation, we get some important 42s. Back in Daniel, there's a 420, 10 times this important number, spanning the ages unto the eschaton, the end. So it's interesting that Matthew in his gospel says that from the calling of the first God follower out of the masses of humanity to the arrival of the Christ, it's 42 generations. And then later on, we're told during the period of the beast and the false prophet and all this sort of thing, there's a 42 involved. And the end of the 42 is the end of everything, the eschaton, the return of the Christ. So the coming of the Christ originally marked by a 42, the intervention into the world and the establishment of the new heaven and the new earth also marked by a 42. Coincidence? I think not. The real question is when Douglas Adams wrote that very funny book, is it a coincidence that he thought the meaning of life, the universe, and everything was also 42? I hope that was interesting for you. I hope you found something in that to hang on to. Go look up some other 42s in the Bible and see what you think, and leave me some feedback in the comments. Let me know what you think. And until next time, Karis Kairene Humin, grace and peace to you.